Hey guys, it's Luke with Motor Minds again, and I want to start off this episode by apologizing for our lack of content. So over Christmas break, I was lucky enough to get a GoPro Hero 5 Black Edition. So basically what happened is I got the GoPro, took it up to New York, we filmed the Christmas special with it without using any exterior microphones, and then when I get back, I bought a mic adapter for $50, GoPro certified mic adapter, and my Rode microphone didn't work with it. After about 2 hours of customer service calls and experimentation, I realized I needed yet another adapter from Rode to get my microphone to work with the GoPro adapter, which means I had to go to Amazon, spend $15 more on another adapter. So after 2 weeks and $75 worth of adapters, I'm back in business. And today what we are going to do is give you guys a follow-up review on my 2012 Ford Focus. We did a minor review, a head-to-head comparison with this car and Jack's Volkswagen Passat in the first episode, many of you may remember. But I didn't really go in-depth with what I love and hate about this car. So after 6 months of ownership, I'm going to provide my thoughts to you. So let's start with a few things that I love even after 6 months of ownership. So one thing that I love the most about this car and what makes it stand out the most to me is just the way it drives. This car drives way better than any other small car I've driven in this segment. The steering is super communicative, and I always feel like I can place this car exactly where I want it, which as a driver, that's what you want. Now this is my daily driver. I drive it every single day. I've put 6,500 miles on it in the 6 months that I've owned it, and basically what that means is that having a car that handles this well on a daily drive is something that I really enjoy, and it's something that I definitely didn't want to live without. I didn't want to have a daily driver that was kind of boring. I definitely wanted to be engaged all the time since I really am a driver's kind of guy. So having this car really makes my commute a whole lot more fun, even though it's just a regular Ford Focus. Just being able to hop behind the wheel, slot some gears, go around some corners a bit too quick. I mean, it's just what makes my day a whole lot more fun. And the reason this car handles so well is that it has the 18-inch alloys and the sports suspension package. Now, that leads to one thing I don't like too much about this car, is that the ride isn't quite as refined as some other cars that I've driven, but I wouldn't blame that on the Focus itself. I'd blame that on the way this car was spec'd from the factory. So 18-inch rims, obviously that's going to harshen up the ride, and the coils are stiffer because it has a sports suspension. Now, the ride may be stiff, but it's still controlled. Like, it's not jittery and out of control and uncomfortable. It's still a very comfortable car. You just feel the road surface a bit more than you would in, let's say, I don't know, a Corolla or any other car that doesn't have wheels that is this big or suspension that is as stiff. But overall, it's really not a big deal. And me being a sporty driver, I don't mind the suspension at all. It makes me feel more connected to the road, and I feel like I have better control over the car. So it's a give-take situation. So another thing I absolutely love about this car is the fact that I have the 10-speaker, 500-watt premium Sony audio system. Now, me and Jack both agree that this is one of the best audio systems in the business, besides like Burmeister or Bowers & Wilkins, or like, it's not the super high-end system, but for regular systems, it's definitely one of the best out there. And that's good, because my old car, I don't think I've told this story, but I spent $1,800 in like 2 days of my life installing a premium sound system in my 04 Pontiac Vibe, which then died a year later, but we can gloss over that. But long story short, I love music, and I wanted a stereo system that was going to totally kick ass. And after coming from the stereo system in my old car, I was worried about taking a downgrade in my new car. So I'm very happy that I got this system, because it is just crystal clear. It has tons of power. I do wish the volume could go up a little bit higher, but really, it's probably just going to save my hearing in the long run. But this leads me to another thing that I don't exactly like. So when you listen to music, not even at a loud volume, there are rattles in some of the doors and some bits of trim that honestly can drive you a little bit crazy. Now, they're not that bad and they come and go, but every now and then you'll get one frequency in the music that'll like cause something in the door panel to like rattle or whatnot. And there's also a few bits and pieces of trim that squeak a little bit, like the gauge cluster itself. I think one of the pieces of plastic in the display is a little bit loose and it can rattle on occasion. But it's really not a big deal. I mean, this car is 5 years old. It's done 40,000 miles. I mean, a few squeaks and rattles aren't the end of the world to me, except for I'm a bit OCD about it, and it does drive me a little bit crazy, but, you know, we can gloss over that. But that does lead me to another thing that I absolutely love about this car, which is the interior. For a Ford Focus, I am very, very impressed. I said before, my cousin used to have a 2000 Ford Focus, and the amount of change they made in 12 years is quite phenomenal. Like, the dash is soft touch. I have a nice leather wrap steering wheel. All the controls look upscale and they feel high quality. And then again, I have these awesome leather seats. The leather on these seats is really, really nice, and it's super thick. Like, the bolstering on this seat, you have a good like 8 inches of just pure bolster on the seat, which is pretty awesome. It just doesn't feel like a Focus. It feels a lot more upscale, and I really like that because I don't like to get in the car and be like, oh, this is just a cheap rattle box. So that's really nice, and I love how I have the infotainment system. I never use the navigation system. That's one thing I don't like about this car. The voice control works great if I'm trying to make a phone call, but if I'm trying to put something in the nav system, forget about it. It just takes forever, and you have to be way too specific with your commands. And one thing I don't really like about the nav system itself is that if I decide to put the stuff in by hand, it's pretty laggy. Like, general interface isn't that bad. Like, when I'm just going through music or through like phone pairing and whatnot, it's really not too bad. But when you try to go through the nav system, it's painfully slow, so I wouldn't even bother. I just got so accustomed to using my phone in the first place that it's not a concern to me that I can't use the nav system in my car. So another thing that I don't really like about this car is the way the transmission is geared. Now, don't get me wrong, the transmission in this car is awesome. It's really smooth to shift, the throws are nice, and it's easy to slot the gears. It's a really nice and satisfying shifter, but I wish it had a 6th gear. If you look at the Mazda 3 that competes with this car, it has a 6-speed, and of course all the automatics now are 6 or 8 speeds, or CVTs for that matter, but a 5-speed manual, while it's a lot of fun to drive, it feels a little bit outdated not having that 6th gear. And I really wish I had it on the highway, because I do a fair amount of highway driving, commuting up to New York to see friends, family, and whatnot. And going on the highway at 80 miles an hour in 5th gear, I'm at like 3,200 RPM, and that really hurts gas mileage. This car is rated at 26 city, 36 highway, and I average around 28 in combined driving, but on the highway, I'm lucky if I'm getting like 31, 32, just because I have to rev this engine up in 5th gear to go at any reasonable speed. So that is really annoying. I do wish I had that 6th gear. But for driving around town, the way the ratios are put in is really nice, because I can put it in 5th gear at 30 miles an hour and just cruise. Now, Jack in his Passat, he can't go for 5th until he's at like 45. Now, that makes it better on the highway, but for around town efficiency, this thing is perfect, which has been proven. I get like 28 and a half MPG. I think I can, actually for the last few weeks I've been getting 29.7. So that's actually pretty damn good, especially for city driving around in Nova. So I am impressed with that. Now, another thing that I don't like about this car is the luggage space. Now, when I bought it, I looked at the specs and it said it had 22 and a half cubic feet of luggage space. I was like, oh, that's great. The old Vibe only had 12. So I totally went for that. But one thing that you gotta keep in mind when you're buying a new car is not just how much luggage space it has, but how usable that luggage space really is, which is something I found out the hard way with this car. So basically, the opening for the trunk, it doesn't open like a big box. Like, there's not a big opening for it to shove big stuff in like there was in my old car. It's sculpted around the rear tail lights. And what that means is there's like this pinch in the middle of the trunk. You have a big opening up top, and then it gets pinched off in the middle. So you really can't fit huge items in the back. And the other thing that I don't like is that the roofline itself slopes upward and inward, which cuts into the trunk space. Now, it looks good when the trunk's closed, but when you open the trunk, you realize that you can't stack stuff all that high, because when you try to shut the door, it slopes in and it cuts off your space. And the other thing that's really annoying is the seats fold down, but they don't fold completely flat. They fold to like an angle like this. So you can use it to like load stuff, but if you want to stack stuff directly on top of the seats, it's going to be at an angle, and that doesn't really mean you can maximize the space available. I do wish they would go flat. Now, yes, it is the bolstering on my nice leather seats that keeps them from going flat, but we can gloss over that. It's not a huge deal. If I ever wanted to do a road trip in this car, I'd probably have to just stack stuff in the back seat instead of folding them down. But that's life. I do wish I had checked that out before I bought the car. And honestly, I feel like the sedan version of this car probably has more luggage space. Like, my mom's Hyundai Accent has more luggage space than this car in the real world. and you can still fold those seats down. So I would check out the sedan, possibly if you're looking for something with a bit more luggage space than the hatchback. Another thing I don't really like about this car is the fact that the back seat space is pretty minimal. You have really good headroom, and if you're not sitting behind me, legroom's pretty good, but when I do haul 5 people around, the person that sits behind me is basically in a torture chamber because I'm 6'2", and basically the amount of legroom that the person behind me has is about the width of my hand. That's about all you get. It's about the width of my hand. So whoever's sitting behind me is going to be pretty crammed, but whoever's behind the passenger, they're set. There's actually a fair amount of room for people behind them. It's just since I'm so tall, there wasn't a lot of give when it comes to me adjusting my seat back. The person just gets stuck and it's not super comfortable for them. But me being a driver and this being my car, I never sit in the back seat. I don't think I've ridden in the back seat once since I bought this car. So it doesn't bother me at all. But if you do have a family, you're going to be doing a lot of long road trips in the car, I probably wouldn't buy it just because your kids won't be all that comfortable, or whoever you decide to put in the back won't be extremely comfortable, but it works in a pinch. So another thing I really like about this car is just the styling of it. I think it's a really cool design overall, and I feel like it stands out a bit more than the rest of the small car market, just because I think Ford went a little bit crazier with the design. It kind of looks like a rocket ship, just the whole way it's sculpted. I feel like the taillights themselves look like they're exactly molded from like the wings of a rocket. I think it's just a really cool looking design, and I like it a lot more than the newer Focuses. Obviously the Focus RS looks great, and so does the new ST, but the baseline titanium Focus, I think the new version looks a bit more girly, where this one looks a bit more masculine and a bit more purposeful through its design. I don't like how basically what they did with the new car was they basically got rid of a lot of the lines that used to flow through and made it a lot more squared off. And it's a bit more conservative because of that, and I don't think it looks as good. As I was saying, if you get the ST or the RS, obviously those things look phenomenal because of the body kits they put on them and the new front fascias and the diffusers in the back, especially on the RS. I mean, that thing looks awesome. But I think the 2012 model Focus looks a whole lot better than the 2017 model. That's just my opinion, though. So I guess this is probably a good time to finish off with this video. I promise you I'm going to try to get some new footage from new dealerships. It's been a big pain trying to do that because obviously I haven't had a working camera and whatnot, and it's also kind of tricky to make those connections in the first place. Obviously Orasmont Toyota has been super helpful with us, and hopefully we'll be able to use them to get in touch with other dealerships to be lending cars for more reviews. And especially now that Jack's off at school, it'll be interesting to see how all the editing goes through. But overall, yeah, the Focus, great car. I've never gotten in and be like, man, I wish I got something else. Every single day I get in this car and I drive it, I'm just like, I'm so glad I picked this car, just because it has a bit more personality than any other car out there, because it has a few flaws. It has a rattly door, could have a 6-speed, but overall it's a blast to drive. It has a really nice upscale interior, great sound system, and I can put some crap in the back with a little bit of struggling. It still has that versatility. If you're looking for a practical, fun to drive car, definitely check out the Focus. If you can go without the fun to drive, I'd probably look at a Corolla or the Corolla IM. I think that's a really good option for someone that isn't looking for something super fun to drive. But if you're looking for something really fun to drive, I would definitely check out the Focus, and it definitely has my stamp of approval. Thanks again for watching Motor Minds, and hopefully you guys will tune in next week for our next video.